Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our news digest today, and we're talking about the news from Myanmar, which is also called Burma by some countries. Myanmar in Chinese, that's a country, of course, in Southeast Asia, or maybe South Asia. It kind of depends on your perspective. It's right next to India there, next to Bangladesh and Thailand. So it's basically an Asian country, but of course the news from Myanmar has been all about the Rohingya, who are an ethnic minority in Myanmar who are being forced to flee to Bangladesh.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking a little bit about this particular problem, learn more about Myanmar, and also what these folks are having to put up with right now, some of the difficulties, the hardships they're going through.
Indeed, and of course we're all kind of surprised by the reaction of the president of Burma now, or of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, and I guess people may have expected her to be more humanitarian about the treatment of these people, but she seems to be kind of supporting the violence going on with them, and she's also seeming to support their expedition or their leaving of the country, their exodus from Myanmar into Bangladesh. I guess people in Myanmar just don't want them around. Okay, so let's talk about this humanitarian crisis in today's lesson. Let's read the entire content and we'll be right back. Violence broke out in Myanmar between the nation's army and a group of militants in 2017. As a result of the fighting, over 600,000 Rohingya, an ethnic minority in Myanmar, have been forced to flee to Bangladesh. Several refugees claimed that they had been shot at by Myanmar's soldiers as they tried to escape. Soldiers have also burned down over 250 villages so far during the conflict. In response, the UN and other international organizations have condemned the soldiers' aggressive attacks. It was expected that human rights champion and Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi, Myanmar's de facto leader, would do the same. However, in recent speeches, she has refused to place any blame on her government. The Rohingya refugee crisis has long been a thorny issue in Myanmar. While the ancestors of the Rohingya people came to Myanmar generations ago, they are viewed as illegal immigrants. Besides, since the Rohingya are Muslim, there are religious tensions between this group and most nationals in the predominantly Buddhist country. Aung San Suu Kyi's response has disappointed those who hoped to see her speak out strongly against the military's inhumane actions. Instead, she questioned the neutrality of news reports and suggested that the refugees are partly responsible for the violence against them. In addition, she boldly claimed the Rohingya have equal access to healthcare and schooling, although this is clearly not the case. In 1982, the government passed a law that denied Rohingya citizenship in their own country, preventing them from accessing these public services. Despite heavy criticism, Aung San Suu Kyi has remained firm in her stance, remarking that her government doesn't fear international scrutiny. Her statements have led many to re-evaluate her reputation for being a kind and compassionate leader and question her ability to govern her nation.
We're going to be talking about some current news that has happened in the last year at least. And it's been surprising to see this news story because it also is about a leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, I always thought was, someone who fought for rights and tried to protect human rights of people in her country of Myanmar, but not necessarily all the people. So let's take a look at this. We've got a title that says, she has a shocking response to violence in Myanmar. Your response is what you do after something happens to you or you see something. Here it says, violence broke out in Myanmar between the nation's army and a group of militants in 2017. We use this verb phrase break out when something happens rather suddenly. We'll use it to talk about war in particular. A war broke out. It suddenly started. Here, violence broke out in Myanmar between the nation's army, the army that belonged to the country and was there to protect the country, and a group of militants in 2017. When you talk about militants, you're talking about people who are fighting usually against an authority like a country, who want change or who want to upset or overthrow something. These militants actually took on the nation's army, which is pretty amazing because the army's huge and they probably didn't have a very big group as far as these militants go.
They're probably similar to rebels, people who are trying to become independent or overthrow the government or something like that. So it's probably similar, but this is a group of militants. They've got weapons and things like that. And there was some kind of violence that broke out, some kind of conflict that broke out. And here we have the phrase to break out. Your face could break out in acne, for example. It just means suddenly something bad happens rather quickly. War broke out, a fire broke out, etc.
Or maybe even pretty serious disease broke out. We'll often use that too.
It can happen that way. Just a sudden starting of something bad. And as a result of the fighting, over 600,000 Rohingya, an ethnic minority in Myanmar, have been forced to flee to Bangladesh. Okay, Rohingya there. We looked this up before the program. We were trying to figure out exactly how to pronounce this. Rohingya. Different pronunciations came up, but I decided to go with Rohingya, although I may be incorrect there, but please bear with me. This is a news story here, but in any case, they are an ethnic minority in Myanmar. If you're talking about something ethnic, that means of a particular subgroup within a population, usually some kind of minority, an ethnic minority like blacks or Hispanics are ethnic minorities in the United States. Here, an ethnic minority would be the Aboriginals, the Amis, or the Atayal people. They are ethnic minorities. Minority just means a group of people who are smaller in number than the majority.
So they were forced to flee or go quickly to Bangladesh. If you see that word flee, you know they're running away from some sort of danger or a risky situation where they're trying to get away from it very quickly. Several refugees claimed that they had been shot at by Myanmar's soldiers as they tried to escape. Remember, these people, these refugees, were actually living. That was their country, Myanmar. And when they were forced to flee to Bangladesh, they became refugees at that point. We know because of the unrest around the world that we've got a lot of refugees who are fleeing their war-torn countries that are in the midst of fighting. A refugee, though, has been forced to leave their country and settled into a new country, and their new country at this point is Bangladesh. So if you claim something, you say something happened, perhaps there isn't evidence or proof yet, but you're saying this is what happened. And they said that the soldiers who were part of the nation's army in Myanmar shot at them, used guns and shot at them as they were trying to escape or trying to flee.
That's what happened. So, of course, they had been shot at. They were shot at. I guess you could say that, but this is past perfect because we're comparing this with another action that happened in the past. They claimed that they had been shot at by these soldiers when they were trying to escape. And soldiers have also burned down over 250 villages so far, up to the present, during the conflict. So they burned those villages down. They torched them, you could say. And this, of course, is a conflict, which is any situation in which two or more people are disagreeing about something. You might have a conflict in the office that's just an argument between people. But in this particular case, it's an armed conflict. It's actually war going on, if you could say that. There is problems going on between these different groups of people. People are getting hurt, killed, etc. It is a conflict.
Oftentimes, before something is declared to be a war between two parties or even more people, they will use this word conflict. So it can be a long armed struggle between groups. In response, the UN and other international organizations have condemned the soldiers' aggressive attacks. These soldiers, of course, belonging to Myanmar. If you condemn something, you say, hey, this is wrong.And we don't like it. So you express your disapproval, and it's a public expression of that disapproval. The soldiers' aggressive attacks. Notice we're using the possessive. So whose aggressive attacks? The soldiers' aggressive attacks.If you're aggressive, you're really ready to attack or confront somebody. Usually you feel a lot of aggression, so you're behaving in a really forceful way. I know when I've taught at some of the companies here in Taiwan, they're looking to hire new people, especially in sales. They'll say, we want someone who's aggressive. Be careful with this adjective because aggressive is often used in sort of a negative way, at least to native speakers of that language. If you're aggressive and you work for a company, you might, step on other people to get what you want. You're not a good team worker, not a team player. So be careful with this word aggressive.
Right, and sometimes, of course, you need to be aggressive to drive in Taipei's traffic. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. So you need to be a little bit assertive, a little aggressive here. So yes, international organizations have condemned those aggressive attacks. You guys should not be doing that kind of stuff. You are naughty boys.Yeah. And if you were in our countries, we would punish you. And it was expected that human rights champion and Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi, Myanmar's de facto leader, would do the same. Yes, we remember her. She was a big hero back in the days when Myanmar was ruled by the military junta, and they wouldn't give up power, and she won an election, what was it, 1998 or something like that, but they didn't recognize it, so she was like this underdog, and we thought that she would champion the little people of the world. She was going to stand up for them, but hey, she did the opposite, it says here. However, in recent speeches, she has refused to place any blame on her government. Hey, we're doing nothing wrong with those people. That's their problem. They're the cause of this problem. So a lot of people were kind of caught off guard by that. We kind of expected her to say something else.Yeah,
it says here that she's Myanmar's de facto leader. If you're a de facto leader, it means you may not officially be the leader, but people look to you as if you are the leader. So she's a de facto leader. However, it says in recent speeches, she has just refused to place any blame on her government.Now, I know in the first paragraph it said this violence broke out between militants and the nation's army. So I don't know what started this fight, but it looks like the militants are definitely losing, and now they're being shot at as they're trying to escape from Myanmar itself. So if you blame someone for something, it just means they're looking at you and saying, this is your fault. You did this. You're the wrong party. So we're going to talk more about this, guys, but right now,We're going to spend a couple of minutes listening to our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, my name is Tina. 我们首先来看到第一段的第二个句子写着 As a result of the fighting, over 600,000 Rohingya, an ethnic minority in Myanmar, have been forced to flee to Bangladesh. 在这里呢，提到了缅甸的军队跟激进分子爆发了这样子的暴力事件，而正因为这样子的 fighting， 我们在英文里面 as a result of 由于因为这场斗争呢，超过60万名的缅甸少数民族，这里讲到是罗兴亚人被迫逃到孟加拉。这里的 an ethnic minority， ethnic 当作形容词解释成为民族的、种族的，常常在新闻的事件里面提到的 ethnic cleansing，指的呢就是种族清洗的意思。A minority 在这里是名词，解释成为少数团体或者是弱势团体，它的相反词 majority majority 则是有多数团体的意思。这些人被迫逃离到了孟加拉这个地方，而作为回应，我们来看一下第一段中间的句子提到In response, the UN and other international organizations have condemned the soldiers' aggressive attacks. 看到这样子的战争呢，联合国跟其他的国际组织也谴责的英文叫做 condemn。我们呢来造一个例句 We condemn his violent behavior， 也就是代表着我们谴责他暴力的行为，而联合国跟其他的国际组织则是谴责这些士兵的 aggressive attacks。aggressive 在这里呢，当作形容词，就是有侵略的意思。后面的句子接着说 It was expected that human rights champion and Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi, Myanmar's de facto leader, would do the same.It was expected that 再加上子句，也就是说一般预期会有怎么样的状况，而后面所代表的这个人翁山苏姬呢，他有两个头衔，首先是 Human Rights Champion 人权的斗士，同时他也是 Nobel Peace Prize winner 诺贝尔的和平奖得主呢，一般人预测呢他会有同样的回应。这里后面提到他是目前缅甸的领导者，我们用了 de facto， 在这里是一种呢法律上面的用语，代表着事实上的意思。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, let's continue with today's edition of News Digest. We're talking about the events in Myanmar and the leader of Myanmar's shocking response to the violence happening to the Rohingya, who are an ethnic minority of Muslims living in Myanmar. Myanmar, of course, is a country that is mostly Buddhist. But in any case, we're talking about the shock that people in the international community have expressed at her reaction to this crisis. She seems to be saying, hey, there's no blood on my hand. Our government is not to blame. So the Rohingya refugee crisis has long been a thorny issue in Myanmar. Okay, so the Rohingya crisis has been going on for quite some time. They're considered refugees, or at least they are now, because they're fleeing to Bangladesh, which is one of the two countries to the west of Burma, India, and Bangladesh there. They've all been heading to Bangladesh there. And it's been going on for quite some time, but it's a thorny issue. Thorny has to do with a thorn, which is a little sharp piece of material on a plant, usually on a rose or something. And if it's thorny, it means that it's something that causes conflict or controversy. So it's a thorny issue. It's just not something you can discuss without people getting angry.
So let's talk about the background of the Rohingya people. It says here, the ancestors of these people came to Myanmar generations ago. Your ancestors are the people in your family that you're descended from. You're a descendant of your ancestors. Usually ancestors refer to people back farther or further than just a grandparent. It's like great, great, great. So where did your ancestors come from? The ancestors of current modern-day Rohingya folks came to Myanmar generations ago. So each generation is a group of people that were born and lived around the same period of time. My parents are in a different generation than I am. So they are viewed, the Rohingya, they're viewed as illegal immigrants, like they didn't have the right to come into Myanmar. They just kind of totolai. They just secretly came in. We know what illegal immigrants are about because in America we have a lot of people who are illegally entering our country and then staying. So if you're illegal, you're doing something against the law. And an immigrant is someone who moves from their country to a new country to live.
Yeah, and they came here generations ago. I suppose it would be the same if the Aborigines in Taiwan said, hey, you people from China came over here to our island here, so you're actually illegal. So if they got the power, they would kick them out. Of course, to most people in Taiwan, that notion would be absurd. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Who would think that? But that's kind of what is happening in Myanmar there. They've been there for hundreds of years, but they're still considered illegal immigrants. Immigrant, of course, is somebody who moves from one country to another. And besides, since the Rohingya are Muslim, there are religious tensions between this group and most nationals in the predominantly Buddhist country. So they are Muslims here, but in Myanmar, most of the people are Buddhist, just like most of the people in Thailand are Buddhist. And so, of course, there are religious tensions between these two groups. Tensions are controversies. They just don't get along with each other. They just don't want the other one near them.
Yeah, if you don't get along, you can say, oh, there's a lot of tension between me and my coworker. Here, there are tensions because of their different religious viewpoints. Their religions are so different that there are tensions between them. So, Aung San Suu Kyi, her response, how she's reacted, has disappointed those who hope to see her speak out strongly against the military's inhumane actions. Inhumane just refers to anything that doesn't seem like a person has a heart would do. Why are the military allowed to just shoot these people who are trying to escape the conflict? Those that are trying to go to Bangladesh are being shot at. And that is surprising, actually. If you speak out against something, it just means you disagree with something and you say publicly that you don't think something is right. Well, instead of that, she's questioned the neutrality of news reports and suggested that the refugees are partly responsible for the violence against them. If something's neutral, it means they don't take sides. And nowadays, it seems like all news reports, they aren't just stating the facts, they have an opinion. So it's hard to know what's really fair and true. She says the news reports aren't fair. And she says, hey, some of this is because of the Rohingya people and what they have done. That's why they're getting on the other side of this violence. That's why violence is broken out. It's not just the army. It's the Rohingya people, too. They're doing something wrong.
So she's basically saying that Western news reports are not being neutral, they're being biased, and they're not reporting on the violence from the Rohingya themselves. That's according to her. And in addition, or also, she boldly claimed the Rohingya have equal access to healthcare and schooling, although this is clearly not the case. So she boldly claimed this. Boldly means you do something very bravely, especially if it's something that other people aren't going to agree with. So, boy, are you being bold here. Boy, Darth Vader, only you could be so bold. That's what Princess Leia said in Star Wars when their ship was captured. But in any case, she boldly claimed this. Hey, they have equal access to healthcare and schooling. They can have these things just like anybody else. But clearly, according to the next part of this article, that's not true.
Yeah, in 1982, if something's not the case, it just means that's not the situation as it is. So in 1982, the government passed a law that denied the Rohingya citizenship in their own country. So they passed a law saying, I don't care if you've lived here for generations, you're not a citizen. To deny somebody something is to turn them down, to refuse something that they want. And that has prevented them from accessing or having access to healthcare and schooling both. Those are public services. Now, despite heavy criticism, Aung San Suu Kyi has remained firm in her stance. She hasn't changed her position. You could also say your stance is how someone stands. It can be literal. Here it's figurative, meaning that's her viewpoint. She's not changing her opinion. She has remained firm in that. Heavy criticism means a lot of people have criticized her, saying she's wrong or she's not being fair herself. She says her government doesn't fear international scrutiny. Scrutiny is close observation, looking at a situation very carefully. She says, hey, we haven't done anything wrong, so bring your newspapers in. We don't care. We're in the right here.
We have nothing to hide. You can't scare us. You do not frighten us. Yeah. Well, the article goes on to say, her statements have led many to reevaluate her reputation for being a kind and compassionate leader. And they also question her ability to govern her nation. So many people have given her this reputation, or she has a reputation of being a kind and compassionate leader. She was the underdog for so many years, fighting against those evil military men. So she was kind of seen as a saint. But now people have started to question that. They're re-evaluating her reputation. Maybe we were wrong all along. Her reputation, of course, is what other people think of her. Yeah. They thought she was kind kind and compassionate, which means you have feelings for others and you want to help them out. And they also question or they doubt her ability to govern her nation. So, hey, looks like she's become kind of a bad person all of a sudden.Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? So your reputation is based on your own actions and what other people say about you, their viewpoints. So we'll see if that remains like that or if she's able to get her good reputation back. Right now, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
在第二段的一刚开始提到，这些罗兴亚人呢，以前被视为是 illegal immigrants， 是非法的移民。接着我们来看到第二段中间的句子写着 Besides, since the Rohingya are Muslim, there are religious tensions between this group and most nationals in the predominantly Buddhist country.在这里的 since 我们要解释成为因为这些呢罗兴亚人他们大部分都是 Muslim 回教徒，所以当然跟这个以佛教为主的这些人民来讲呢，这个国家之间是有相当多的 tensions， 也就是紧张局势的意思。Tension 在这里当作名词，可以指的是紧张的状况或者是局势。举个例子来说 She felt the tension as soon as she entered the room. 她一进房间就感受到了这紧张的氛围，而后面的 predominantly 当作副词，则是解释成为占主导地位的或者是优势的意思。在第三段提到呢翁山苏姬的回应，我们来看一下第三段的第二个句子。Instead, she questioned the neutrality of news reports and suggested that the refugees are partly responsible for the violence against them.那么其实呢大家本来预期他会强烈的来反对这些军队不人道的行径，但是 instead 相反的呢他反而去 question， 他去质疑这些新闻报道的中立性。我们来看一下 neutrality 当作名词就是有中立地位的意思，除此之外还 suggested that， 在这里的 suggest 要代表着暗示，它暗示这些难民啊，对于这样子的行为也是有一部分责任的。在英文里面我们讲到 be responsible for， 也就是有代表要为什么负责任的意思。最后我们来看到文章的最后一句Her statements have led many to re-evaluate her reputation for being a kind and compassionate leader and question her ability to govern her nation. 她说的这一些话我们都叫做 statements， 导致很多人要重新评估她的 reputation。Reputation 代表一个人的名声名望，因为向来大家都觉得他是一个非常 kind and compassionate leader，既宽容又富有同情心的领袖，但是这样的名声大家已经开始质疑，并且也质疑他是否能够有统治国家的能力。OK， 以上就是今天的课文讲解，谢谢收听。
Okay, everybody, that brings us to the end of our news digest for today. And here's hoping that all of your news is good news. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.